Oil. The 19th century was transformed by it. The 20th century was shaped by it. And the 21st century is moving beyond it. But who gave birth to the oil industry? And what are they planning to do with that power in a post-carbon world?
CorbettReport.com.
Those with properly functioning bull excrement detectors might question whether the embedding of RFIDs and processors in our fridges and coffee makers and egg timers is really all about saving a few watts of electricity or the hassle of pressing a few buttons. This is where the true story of smart technology comes in. Smart technology represents less of a breakthrough in power distribution and more of a revolution in complete, constant, panopticon-like surveillance of everyone. As these smart technologies begin to invade our homes, we are becoming mere nodes in a giant network that we yet but dimly comprehend. Called the Internet of Things, the plan is to create a network that will eventually include every single object on the planet. And as the public is finally becoming aware, such networks provide golden opportunities for corporations and governments alike to collect data and spy on the population. This is not mere conjecture. Before becoming enmeshed in an affair that ultimately derailed his career, former CIA Director David Petraeus bragged openly about how these smart technologies would allow intelligence agencies to spy on everyone in their own homes using their own appliances. Speaking at a summit for In-Q-Tel, the CIA's venture capital firm, Petraeus noted, "Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters." In practice, these technologies could lead to rapid integration of data from closed societies and provide near-continuous, persistent monitoring of virtually anywhere we choose. Whether Petraeus' own downfall is a result of FBI eavesdropping on private emails as part of a plan to warn future would-be whistleblowers, poetic justice, or mere irony, it is nonetheless instructive. When everything that anyone does is tracked, traced, and databased at all times, from our dishwasher usage to our television viewing to our toilet flushes, no one will be able to avoid the gaze of the state, regardless of whether or not they have something to hide. As IT World's Kevin Fogarty observed, if J. Edgar Hoover were alive, he would die of jealousy at the technologies available to the would-be big brothers of today. As nightmarish as this seems, the possibilities for tyrannical misappropriation of this technology are even worse. Given that networked appliances allow for remote access, smart technology actually raises the specter that governments and corporations will be able to control the items in your own home. Here again, as much as this sounds like Buck Rogers' fantasy or Orwellian nightmare, it is in fact mundane reality. As far back as 2008, California lawmakers were already tabling legislation that would mandate the installation of smart technologies and allow government bodies to automatically adjust homeowners' thermostats up or down to conserve energy at peak usage times. The stark truth is that any appliance can be turned on or off, adjusted, or otherwise manipulated by anyone with access to the network remotely. Whether or not we want to use these technologies, the average person is being left with little choice. More and more of the appliances and household goods we use have these technologies embedded by default, and now, thanks to the so-called smart meters that are increasingly being installed in people's homes without their knowledge or consent, that choice is being removed entirely. So, this isn't just about smart appliances. This is about smart, networked everything, and the entire reordering of society that is implied by this revolution that we are currently undergoing. This is about the cashless society. This is about driverless cars. This is about 5G millimeter wave cellular networks. This is about nationwide facial recognition databases that themselves are tied into nationwide facial scanning camera networks. This is about the biometric identification control grid. Ultimately, this is going to be about autonomous weapons and drones and artificial intelligence and all of these crazy technologies that are just coming into view now. But it is important to understand that all of these technologies are resting on an infrastructure that is being put into place right now, and that infrastructure is understandable, at least in its broad outlines. That is the smart grid that is being slotted in right now. It's interesting to see the parallels between that smart grid infrastructure going into place and the infrastructure that came in the late 19th, early 20th century that codified the oil industry into society, the way that our society is now built around the oil industry and its byproducts, to the point where our cities are literally engineered around the roadways that are carrying the cars, which of course are fueled by the gasoline, which comes from the petrochemicals. This is all a system that didn't just exist. It wasn't just there. All of this infrastructure was created and put in through a concerted effort over a period of decades. And now we're seeing the laying of the infrastructure for the 21st century equivalent of the oil commodity, which shaped the early 20th century society. Now, in the early 21st century, we're seeing the society being shaped around the new commodity, data.
We see the smart grid movement. If you look at the history of it just a little bit, the smart grid movement was snuck in 2009 by Barack Obama. But stimulus grants were offered to utilities to go out and do some trial balloons with a more massive implementation of smart grid. And the several utilities around the country were picked to receive these grants. And indeed, they went out and they bought smart meters and they put them on homes and they started their trials and so on. And since then, it's just exploded. But here's the thing that's greatly disturbing about the smart grid movement is that in 2009, it not only happened in the United States, it happened all over the world. Literally. It happened in European countries. It happened in Great Britain. It happened in China, in India, in Japan, in South Korea. At the same time in 2009, all these countries decided to throw stimulus money at creating a smart grid in all these various countries. Some people call it the Internet of Energy, the energy web, to control all of the energy produced and consumed in the world from a single control point. But when I saw that there was a masterminding going on a global basis, because that can't happen spontaneously everywhere in the world at the same time. Somebody's pulling the string. But without it, technocracy cannot succeed. It cannot succeed if smart grid is not implemented everywhere. And so it has been. And here we are.
This is a coordinated global campaign that is ongoing right now to sell the public on this great new thing that's going to transform our world and is going to be the thing that our society depends on. In the 20th century, it was oil. In the 21st century, it's data. And more specifically, the things that can be done with oil, the things that can be done with data. Because it seems extremely difficult to imagine how lowly people like ourselves at the bottom rung of this power pyramid can possibly fight back against such a coordinated control grid system.
It's hard to fight an enemy that you don't recognize or can't see, that people have no visibility whatsoever of this issue. This recent story of a bill being passed in the United States to allow internet service providers to sell your browser history to commercial companies and the government too. Well, that's a huge privacy issue. Do you really want anybody else having access to your search history like on Google? But another article just came out about a month later that some ingenious programmer types had discovered a way, or they created a way to pollute your browser history on your own computer, to pollute it with meaningless, nonsensical stuff that would clog their network, if you will, with bogus information. That's genius. And there's a lot of people fighting smart grid in various forms around our country and other countries in the world as well. If the smart grid could be effectively scuttled, it would set their plans back 100 years where it belongs.
Once again, Patrick Wood of technocracy.news. So The first step in all of this is informing ourselves and informing others about these issues. And that can be as simple as making this a topic of conversation so that we can better understand and better spread the word about these important issues. That is an important and an interesting and a simple thing that we can and should be doing. Take Back Your Power documentary, talking about the smart meters, why they are such a bad thing, why we need to get rid of them, the surveillance utility for the utility companies and the government, of course, but also the health effects of these smart meters that are being installed now, these smart meters with their microwave radiation and the health effects that they are having on people. They need to be stopped. We need to stop this process that most people don't even know is going on. The Empower Movement, and that is at empowermovement.com, where you can watch the first episode of the documentary series that they are producing right now on an innovative new idea for stopping the smart meter installations. The Empower docu-series illustrates a powerful new method to restore social justice and accountability. Episode number 1 focuses on solving the smart meter problem, how we can prevent and reverse the installation of this dangerous technology through holding corporate executives and government actors financially accountable for the first time ever. And in so doing, we can restore safety in our homes and bring balance to our world.
At the top of the pyramid, where the problem lies, they can't do everything. So they have coerced, mostly with money, in order to get the agenda to actually happen on the ground. Mm-hmm. So if you start removing all those people that are just under them, it stops. Who's gonna actually do it if they're gonna be liable?
So on the empowermovement.com website, you will find the FAQ with the actual document templates for the notice of liability and the notice of fault and the notice of default. And there's going to be further documents that come out in the future about the first true bill, second true bill, third true bill, first notice to debtor, second notice to debtor, third notice to debtor, and finally enforcement. So this is a legal process, and it is it's absolutely fascinating, even if you don't plan to do it personally, and why not? But even if you don't plan to do it personally, you should go to the website and take a look through the documents, because this is an example of how we are not passive spectators in this spectacle that's going on around us, and there's nothing we can do, poor us, we're just going to be locked into this enslavement grid and we'll just have to sit down and take it. No, you do not have to sit down and take it. There are actual things that you can do to counteract this agenda, and it must be counteracted. You know why this agenda must be thwarted, because the oligarchs of old are the datagarchs of our current age, and they are going to try to rule you, your family, and everyone around you with an iron fist. Perhaps quite literally, a robotically iron fist. This is the technocratic nightmare that we are being steered into, and we have to steer ourselves away from that with all our might. There is just too much at stake here.
Heirs to an oil fortune join the divestment drive.
There is a price to carbon in their future.
The negative impact of population growth.
That is important not only for the planet, it is important for the business.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population.
How and why big oil conquered the world. Watch the documentary for free or purchase a DVD copy at corbettreport.com/bigoil.